Konnichiwa, minasan. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adobe CEP Panels with Bolt CEP. In this lesson, we will learn how to create CEP panels with Visual Studio Code and Bolt. I will show 3 different ways to create a project and get started, and I will provide the files for both the first way, the second way, and the third way. Here are some prerequisites. For the first way, you will need Node.js, and you can install it using the Windows installer. And the second way, we will be using NVM for Windows, which will allow us to run Node without actually having an install on your machine. And finally, the third way, we will see how we can use it using a Docker image inside of a container. Okay, let's meet in the dojo and begin training. Before we begin, remember, may the horse be with you. Okay, the first thing you would need to do is to create an empty folder. You can create this anywhere, and in my case, I created it on my desktop and called it Adobe CEP Panels. Realistically, you would maybe want to create it in your source repos folder on Windows. Here I do have all my applications that I've created recently, but just for the sake of demonstrating the tutorial, I created it here on my desktop to show you can put this anywhere. Now here, inside, we'll use the first way, which is Node, and I created batch scripts for all of these, which are pretty awesome. You can get started with just one click. Here I opened this up in VS Code, and I can show you the steps for the first way. So the first thing we want to make sure is we have Node installed, preferably version 18 or later. So if we click on this install, you see down here we'll get version 22.20, which is the latest. You could go ahead and install the latest release, but for the long-term support, you click on the Windows installer and you'll get 22.20.0. So we'll click this and install. Now here in Visual Studio Code, I'll hit Control-tilde key to bring up the terminal. And if I type in node version, you see we get 22.20. So that's good. That's the first check. Now, for this first way, all we do need is Node 22.20. I also recommend for my setup that you also install NVM for Windows. What this will allow us to do is switch between Node versions. If you already have a Node version installed, you can still install this NVM for Windows, and it'll automatically connect your current install. When developing older projects, I've used Node version 14 and other versions, and so for this Bolt CEP, you want to make sure you have 18 and higher. And if I run NVM, you see here we get a list of commands. We can use NVM use to use a specific version, and you could also use it to install different Node versions. It's a very handy tool. I suggest you come on here and check out exactly what it does. So NVM list, that'll list the Node versions on my computer. So I can come back here and go NVM list, and you see, yes, I have 2 versions, 22 and 14. And we'll need that in order to automatically switch to version 22.0. And the steps you'll need to prepare for this first way, you want to get the latest version of NPM, then you want to create the CEP project, and then we'll navigate to the directory and start the development environment. So I'll do this manually. You could do this from a command prompt, or you can do it down here in terminal. So I will just show in terminal, and the first thing we want to do is use version 22.20. If I do NVM use 14.21.1, it'll switch it. And if I do node version, you see it's on 14.21.1. So if I do node version, you see 14.21.1. Same thing, NVM version. Well, that's the version of NVM. So we can switch it by doing NVM use 2022.20.0. And again, I'll show you how to do all of this with a click of a button. So that's the first step. Make sure you're using a version higher than 18 to use Bolt CEP. And we want to do npm global install and update npm. In our current directory, if we did npm list, well, that's empty because we don't have any Node projects. And actually, for the time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into our project directory. And if I did npm list, you see we get empty because we don't have any node modules. But if I did npm global list, this is our modules globally for our entire node installation. You can see here it gets it from this. Now with nvm, I'll show this to you really quick. It'll install this folder here on your C drive, and this creates a symlink to your Node.js folder. And whenever you switch NVM versions, it'll just replace this Node.js symlink to the folder with your version, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now I'll do nvm current, and you can see here we get 22.20, which is exactly what we want. CLS for clear the screen. And the next thing we want to do is, again, we want to make sure that we globally update npm. Great. And now the second thing we want to do is we want to npx create Bolt CEP. Now, when I do that, it's going to grab Bolt from the internet, and here we are. Where do you want to create our project? Well, since I'm already inside our Adobe CEP panels, I'll just create a folder and call app. You can make as many of these as you want. So you can call this like CEP project 1, then if you have another one, CEP project 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. I'm just going to call this app, and I'll just call it the standard, and here's where you switch your frameworks. This one is a more newer one, simpler. React is React, and Vue is more like a lighter version, and I do like using Vue, and we can select After Effects, Photoshop, Illustrator, and as many as the other ones we need, and yes, dependencies, yes, and wait. Okay, when it's done, you'll see this message here. To get started, run cd app and build. Now, before I do that, I'm going to actually switch and open up Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to do code dot. And what that'll do is it'll open up Visual Studio, and you'll see my Adobe CEP Panels project folder with the app. And you will have multiple folders if you created multiple projects within this folder. So you can have different panel projects all within a single folder, like, you know, my panels or something. But for the sake of the way I do it, I always create a base folder for one project, and then I have an app folder, which will contain all my apps, and then any other folders will put inside this folder. So just to show you how this is going to work, all your node modules, this is everything that you can install additionally. And in your source file, you will have your JS, which is going to be where your main user interface logic is going to go, your JSX folder, which is where your individual application logic is going to lie, such as After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, additional libraries, and utilities, and shared right here, which is actually used across everything. So After Effects, Illustrator, and Photoshop. This shared code will run in all of these platforms. Now I'm going to hit Control tilde to open up a terminal here, and you see when I do that, I'm currently inside Adobe CEP Panels, just like how I was down here. Well, we actually want to get inside our project directory. We're just inside our container folder. If we run npm list here, you see it's empty. There's no node modules. But if we cd into the app and then we run npm list, now you see we get, yes, all of our node modules here. And this is kind of exactly what we wanted. So when I ran npx create Bolt CEP, what it did is it downloaded this module from the internet and it put it here. You see I'm in this tool called Everything, which you can download from Void Tools and get this app called Everything. It is, in my opinion, by far the best folder and file search program. You can search everything on your computer by regular expressions and filter it out. You can do advanced searches such as located in, word or phrases in the file, and it's absolutely instant. But anyway, it created these in npm cache. So if I open the path, you can see here in the npm cache, I right click properties, you see it's a couple hundred megabytes, and there's a lot of files in here. The other methods, it's not going to download these files and folders and put them into the npm cache. It's going to keep everything within a single folder. So just something to consider. But now I'm going to switch from the command line into Visual Studio Code, where I'll cd into my app folder, and I can run npm list, and here we get all of our node modules. If I was just in my project folder, folder and I did npm run build, it's going to do nothing because there's no node packages there. So I have to cd into my app folder, and then when I do npm run build, it's going to build my panel. And up here, you'll see a distribution file created. Also, notice here in my app data roaming Adobe CEP extensions folder, when I run build, it's going to put a symlink there. You saw it just appear there. This is a very important thing that Bolt CEP does. It puts a symlink there. And when I click the symlink, here we are inside of our panel. Now we can delete this symlink, but if we delete it, it's not going to show up in our Photoshop or other applications. And what that symlink is, when I did the build, it put it in the dist folder, CEP folder, panel that it builds whenever I do build. And so that's what's appearing here now. Now I'm going to open Photoshop. Now here in Photoshop, I could be in After Effects or Illustrator. I can go to Window, Extensions, and now we see our Bolt CEP. And here we go. This I can click, and this is happening from a JavaScript alert. This is an Adobe specific alert. This is a TypeScript test alert. So you have everything that you need to start building your panel. In addition, it also comes with hot reload. So I'll show you how that works. If you want to do hot reload, you'll have to run the development environment. And in order to do that, I'll do npm run dev. And that's going to put it here in localhost 3000. So if I control click, here it is now in a browser, and we could just experiment a little bit more in the browser. We don't get any of these buttons because that's Adobe specific. But the interesting thing is now if I go back to Photoshop, I'm going to put that there side by side, and I'll go into one of my menus here. In JavaScript, our main folder, that's just the main panel right here. And if I click on my main.view, this is the view that we see here, the main panel. When I'm in dev mode only, which I am down here, it's hot reload. So I can change any of this. I can put a lot of S's here just to show you how it's going to change. And watch over here, as soon as I hit save, Control S, it immediately updates instantly. And oh, how beautiful and how convenient that is. I can remove that and hit save, and it automatically updates. I can get rid of the button group entirely. I can get rid of different things such as the stacked icons. I can also get rid of everything here down here and just have the logo, and it's brilliant. And so that's probably the most traditional way to get started, just by those couple of commands that we showed here. Having Node installed, running npx create, coming into the app folder, running build and develop to get you started pretty quickly. But now I've created some batch scripts and I want to show you how that's going to work. So in Visual Studio Code, I'm just going to close the folder. I'm not going to save anything. Now here in my Adobe CEP extensions folder, the symlink is still there. And well, I'm just going to delete that. Don't need it anymore. Now here inside my CEP Panels solution directory, I copied and pasted my little batch script. Some of the requirements in the batch script I explained earlier is you do just make sure you have Node installed, make sure NVM is installed, because this is just my convenient way of doing it. Those are the two prerequisites, having Node installed and having NVM installed. And with those two prerequisites, inside my solution folder, run the batch script. Enter the project name. So the default is app, because I just like to have it that way, but you can name that whatever you want, like my CEP project. Enter the name of the panel and the unique ID, following your standard com org hello world or com organization and the name of your project, and just wait. That's it. It's going to automatically build everything for you and start up the project. So I'll select view, I'll do After Effects, I'll do a couple of them. Yes, yes. And it's creating Bolt CEP in Hello World. Okay, and you see it created my CEP project. And again, you can have as many projects as you want inside your solution directory. Okay, good. Now it's building. And when it builds, it's going to create a symlink here automatically, which it did right there. And you saw in the background, it reloaded because it ran the development environment automatically. And if I click here, you see here's the files. And if I come back and click in my project and type in code, you see it opened up Visual Studio Code, and I have my distribution files here, and hot reload is still enabled, so I can make changes on the fly and see it updated here in the browser or on the Adobe app. And so that's how to do it automatically using my batch script. But again, here you saw it creates additional files and it uses Node that's installed on my machine. But what if I don't have Node or want Node installed on my machine or want any of these modules? I just want to keep everything in a project directory. Well, I'll show you that way next. I'll delete all my npm cache, and here in everything you saw, it's all in the recycle bin, so those files are no longer there. I'll keep this CEP project, and I can just call this like Node. I created it with this first batch script. The second one, I'll show you, that's using nodeenv. Now this is a different way. Here's the batch script. Now some prerequisites are you need Python installed, and if you have Python installed, that's going to install this here, the nodeenv Python package, and it's just a virtual environment for node.js. If you're familiar with Python virtual environments, then this will feel like home to you. That's why I like it. And in this way, we don't need NVM. We don't even need Node to be installed. And in my batch script, you see here, I selected Node version 22.20. You can change this value if you want, but leaving it the same, it has long-term support, so it should be no problem. And what it does is it does the same. It gets your project name, CE panel, name, ID, and the name of your virtual environment. It's going to install the module if not installed. And again, you need Python installed for this to work. It's going to create the virtual environment for Node, activate the environment, update npm, install Bolt, not here. Remember, we searched here and we deleted the files. It's going to install it globally in the environment. And then we're going to actually create the CEP panel, build it, and run it just like we did before. And let's run that script and see what happens. So the name of the project, I'll call it, let's see, I have my CEP project node, and I'll call it my CEP project environment. And we can keep it the same. Panel will be hello world, yes. And here's where we can name the environment, and we'll let everything run. And you see here, it created the virtual environment with Node installed. If I click in here, you see we get scripts. Here's our node, we got our activate, and you see here it's updating npm, which is fine. Create Bolt CEP. It's going to put that inside of our node modules folder. There it is. And just to check on everything, the only place it's installed is in fact inside our CEP panels. Good. It's all contained here, and it didn't create the project yet because I got to create it here with Bolt. Yes, yes, yes. And yes, now it's going to create the project. All right, it created it. Now it's going to build it. Running the development environment. I'm going to come here and refresh the page, and yes, it's working. Now what I'm going to do is show you exactly how that works. So I'm going to go here, keep this folder here. This is our virtual environment. Now what I'm going to do is open Adobe CEP Panels in Visual Studio Code. And here we have our solution folder. We have our virtual environment here. If I want to do npm run serve in the virtual environment, I need to activate the virtual environment. Now here I am in the Adobe CEP Panels. I'll activate the environment by doing CEP environment scripts activate, and now it's activated, the virtual environment. I can cd into my environment project now. Now if I ran npm g list, that's going to show that we have npm installed, Bolt, and core package. And these are all contained inside our environment here. Now, because I'm in the virtual environment, I can do npm run build because I'm in the virtual environment. Now, why this is cool is because I didn't need Node installed on my machine. For example, you see here I'm in my primary command prompt. If I run nvm use 14, now it'll switch to 14, and then I can run node version. You see I have version 14. This is globally on my machine that I have it installed. However, in this virtual environment, if I run node version, you see I get 22.20 because this is all contained within my virtual environment. Here in the scripts, in the source, you see I get npm npx. If I deactivated the environment and I did node version, you see I get 14. But if I did activate and did node version, now I'm 22.20. And this is exactly what we wanted. So we can have everything, including node and Bolt CEP, all in one project. And all I would have to do is just run npm run build or npm run dev for the hot reload to work. That's the second way. I like this way because it's everything contained. Now, the next way is a little technical, but it's another way I can use Docker if you like to have Docker containers. So for my Docker container, I'm just going to delete that. We'll be able to create a Docker image which will contain Node and everything else. So to do that, some of the prerequisites are you want to have obviously Docker installed, and just to make sure that Docker is installed and running, I'll just run Docker, and if we get that, good, that means Docker is installed, and we could run it from the command line. Now in VS Code, you want to have this extension, it's called dev containers, and you should probably install the Docker extension as well. Okay, I'm going to open my folder here, my solution, to get started using Bolt and Docker. So let's start from scratch here. We want to hit F1, and then we want to add a dev container configuration file. Do that, and then we want to add configuration to workspace, and the one we want here is Node.js and TypeScript. And we could choose one over here, but the default is 22 bookworm, so I want that one. And no other features. Nope. Just hit OK. It created a folder .dev container, and inside we have dev container.json. Now, in order to run that, I'm going to hit F1 again, and then click on build and reopen container. And what that's going to do is it's going to use this dev container.json file. Now, when I do that, it's going to reopen VS Code, and it's going to basically use Docker now. So if I hit Control-tilde, now you see I'm in Node. I'm in a workspace, Adobe CEP Panels. Now currently, my project exists in two locations. It exists on my computer, my local machine, and it exists in Docker under this image called dev containers TypeScript Node. It's currently in use by this container that it created called eagerbooth. It just creates a random name for the container, but any files we create here will be automatically pushed into the container here, and of course using the image. Now everything works, so if I do npm list empty, but right now these commands are happening inside of this container in Docker, but they're also being synced back to my local files. I had to make some specific adjustments in order to make this work with Bolt CEP, and so I provided this custom dev container. Right now we just have these two strings. In order to fix permission issues with files going back and forth, I added this post create command, and then I forwarded the ports from Docker to my local machine so that hot reload could work. And I'll show that working right now. If I run create Bolt CEP, there's no command found. And that's because inside of Docker, now remember, everything I do here, all this node stuff, npm stuff, this is not happening on my local machine at all. Only the files that I create here are going to be pushed into Docker. So if I did npx create Bolt CEP, and just to make sure, you can see here in my everything, I still don't have create Bolt CEP. Everything is happening inside of Docker right now. But if I create a project, I create more files. So I'll just call it my CEP project Docker. Oh, I need that. Okay. Yes. Yes. Now, obviously my batch scripts don't apply here, so I do everything from scratch. Yes, yes. It did create the Docker folder here. So again, this is kind of like doing the Python virtual environments for Node, but now just all contained within a container in Docker. In the meantime, I just refreshed my local host, and you can see the development environment is no longer active. Okay, so it created the project here. Everything works as usual. I cd, I can do npm run build, and if I did npm run dev, now you see I get a message. Your application is running on port 3000 is available. And if I click on ports, you see here it forwarded that port from Docker, now available on my local machine. So if I come here now and I refresh this, nothing happens. Dun, 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 dun. And this is where some extra steps are needed. So although yes, it did forward the port, there is an issue because if I come here in my Docker project, in here TypeScript config, you see port 3000, but we also have a serve port and a debug port. These ports didn't come through. Because in Docker, I currently have my open web UI using port 3000. In my CEP config, I'm going to change this to like port 8080. That's usually my CEP dev port anyway, and then I'll save that. Now in my Docker Docker container, I'm going to add the following extra code. Add a comma here after this JSON image, and I'm going to paste this. I'm going to forward all ports, including 8080, 5000, and 8860. And that came from here, 8080, 5000, 8860. Now, when I save it, you see I get a message here, configuration changed, rebuild. And I want to click rebuild here. What that's going to do is it's going to remove the previous Docker container, and it's going to rebuild the Docker container, but I'll still have all my files that were contained in the image. And now when I click port, you can see that all my ports here are available. So in terminal, I'm going to cd into my folder here, clear the screen. It doesn't clear the screen. I actually don't know that for Linux. But anyway, now when I do npm run build, it's going to build it. Npm run dev. Now you see it's on localhost 8080. And so there's one other thing that we have to do. We have to come down to vite-config.ts and look for these lines here where it says server and preview. For both server, we need to add host 0000, same thing, host 0.0.0.0. That's again for the config port and for the config serve port. Those are for these two, the serve port and the port. I'll come back in here and do npm run build one more time and npm run dev. Now if I come back here and I refresh the page, now we get our Bolt CEP panel. And once you get it all set up for Docker, it's easy. Just the setup is a little confusing, but there is one caveat. Remember the symlink. When we built in Docker, we got a message that said that the symlink was built, but the symlink is built in Docker, not on our Windows machine. Sadly, we can't run a Windows script inside of Docker like how you would think we should be able to. And so the thing is, as I'll show you why, if we come into node modules and come down to vite CEP plugin and we search in lib, in this index.js file, coming down here, you see that the global extension folder, this is for when creating the symlink. You see os.platform, when we run it inside of Docker, it's not our Windows extensions folder, app data roaming extensions. It's going to be the Linux version right here, and it's going to build it only inside of Docker. As a side note, the extension for the global extension folder and the local extension folder, it shows you this is the global extension folder, which is seen here in C/program files, common Adobe CEP extensions, but you don't want to put anything there. If you did, you'd come up to CEP config, and where it says symlink, you would just change this to global, and then the symlink will be put inside of this folder. But leaving it as local, we'll keep it inside here. And this was the symlink used for our other project, which we still have access to, but we can just delete it again, so it's going to create the symlink only in here. Now, you only have to do this once, but I included another batch script that I created. It's just called create symlink, and what it does is it's just going to automatically create the symlink for you. And in order to run it, you just copy the create symlink and you paste it inside of your Docker folder, and you can see here now it's right here inside the Docker folder, but don't run it inside of Docker because it's not going to do anything. You need to run it here on your local machine. And you see our extension symlink is not here, but if we click on create symlink, you'll see it created the symlink, and here extensions, here we go, that's the symlink, which when I click on it again, it gives us access to this folder here, dist CEP, and it's still running on localhost 8080. If I open up Photoshop and go to Window Extensions, Bolt CEP, and again, this is my Docker project. We needed one more thing here in vite config, where we scroll down, remember where we entered the host for the serve and the preview? Well, for the server, we want to add this watch command. And what that's going to do is it's going to look every 1 second and see if anything changed. And again, this is only for the Docker version. So I'll run build, I'll run dev, come back here, I'll reload the panel. You can see we get the elements back, but now we can delete and save, and we get our hot reload in Docker. Yes, we can remove these div elements, the stacked icons, we can remove the button group, and we can restore everything and working in Docker. So how convenient is that. And one other thing, up here in your dev container.json, if you wanted to add some customizations, such as automatically installing extensions, you can just add your customizations here, VS Code extensions. Now I'll rebuild. Now every time you open up your dev container, it'll automatically come with those extensions installed. So here's my local install, but you can see here in my dev container, we get all the extensions. Okay, and that's how to begin building CEP extensions using Bolt with Node locally or inside a Python environment and inside Docker. Let's quickly review. Okay, here's the final project. I will include these 3 batch scripts, which you can see up here. The batch script that'll get you started with just Node installed on your machine. The batch script here, which will use Python's virtual environment to create and contain everything inside of your folder without the need for npx or Node installed on your machine. Here is the dev container.json file, which will get the container image, TypeScript node using 22 bookworm, as well as the port forwardings using port 8080 instead of 3000, using the customizations for Visual Studio Code extensions, and the port attributes so that we can see what they are. So I will include the dev container folder and the 3 batch scripts. You could run these 3 batch scripts inside your project solution file to create new projects for Bolt CEP. For Docker specific only, make sure that you copy and paste the create symlink inside the directory here, and make sure that you run the symlink from your Windows local machine to create the symlink, so that when you build, you can see your extension come up in Adobe. Now for Docker only, some of the changes we made were in the CEP config.ts file, where we changed the port to 8080 because 3000 is used for Open Web UI, and so just to avoid confusion, we can change this symlink to global if we want the symlink to appear inside of this directory, program files, common files, Adobe, CEP extensions, but to leave it at local, it'll always appear here, your username, app data roaming, Adobe CEP extensions. The symlink created brings us here, which represents the dist CEP folder where your build files are. And the last thing we had to do is come into our vite-config.ts, scroll down here, and just make sure that our server and preview contain these new lines: host for server, watch for server, and then host for preview. And with all that, you could now create CEP plugins using Bolt in many different ways. Well, I sincerely hope that you learned something from this technical tutorial. I thought I'd share everything that I learned. If you have any additional comments or suggestions, please let me know. Until next time, live long and prosper.